All right, so I got tagged for my top 10 MCU movies so far to date. So I'm going to include myself and my wife, and let's check it out. Let's see what our top 10 is. All right, aloha YouTubers, Doom143 here in my son's messy ass room to do the tagged for my top 10 MCU movies. I was tagged by Joker M21. I think this started with the pressable defects, and I guess it got tagged to Erod 212, and then it got tagged to Joker, and now they're tagging me. So we are gonna do my top 10 MCU movies, and then we're also going to include my wife's list. Now, the reason we're including my wife's list is because she's not a comic person. So I figured, you know what, it'd be cool is to see a non-comics person's perspective versus my perspective. Now, here's the thing. It's always good to know a little bit about the person before you actually do a top 10 list. So, a little bit about me. I'm all about the feels, all right? How a movie made me feel. It doesn't even have to really be a whole good movie. It could just have one or two things about the movie that made me feel a certain way, whether it made me cry, whether it made me happy, whether it made me like scream and shout. That's what I'm all about. I'm all about how a movie really captured me and just really how it made me feel. Of course, it's got to be a good movie, but there are certain things I'm just like, if I don't feel a certain way, the movie's done. The movie could just be very simple, but it could be one or two things that really got to me, and all of a sudden, I just absolutely love that movie. My wife, on the other hand, she's into actors and actresses. She's into music, and she's also into comedy, right? So, depending on the actor and actresses that's on that particular movie, if they were in something else that she watched, she's going to have an immediate connection. For example, Yandu. Yandu was in the beginning of The Walking Dead, when The Walking Dead series first came out. That's why she absolutely loves anything to do with Guardians of the Galaxy. So was the new Wandu. The guy who was trying to learn how to whistle, I forgot his name. He was also in a show that she used to watch with the Gilmore Girls. So because of those things, she absolutely loves Guardians of the Galaxy. She loves music. So of course, anything with a great soundtrack, anytime they sync the soundtrack to something that gives her the feels, all of a sudden, she's absolutely in love with it as well. All right, so we are going to do now our top 10, and we'll start off with number 10. All right, so number 10 for both my wife and I was Black Panther. Now, the reason we both chose Black Panther as number 10 is because we both actually didn't enjoy Black Panther at all. So, the reason we chose Black Panther is because our son absolutely loves Black Panther. It's the only MCU movie that he will voluntarily watch by himself over and over and over again. There's no other MCU movies that he would watch. For myself, I'm not too sure if you guys remember this part, but there was a fight scene between him and I don't know, the other guy. It was in the waterfall. Now, I've trained jujitsu now for over 5, 6 years, right? And he did this one jujitsu move to make that guy tap out, right? Sorry, I wish I was better with the names. I'm about 3 beers in, so forgive me. All right, and it was such a weak positioning on the neck that there was no reason for that person to tap out. So from that scene on, I couldn't even watch the movie. I didn't even like it. I didn't even think it was that good. And for my wife, she just thought it was okay. The only reason she put it as her number 10 is because our son absolutely loves that movie. So that's our number 10. All right, so number 9 for me is Ragnarok. And number 9 for my wife is actually The Avengers. So she put number 9. I asked her why she put it as number 9. She said that she liked the fact that they came together. That's about it. She thought it was cool that they all came together, and that's it. So for me, I have Ragnarok as number 9. Really, I think the thing that got me is that it was funny. Like I remember the whole Hulk thing with him, Battle Hulk. I forget what it's called. It was him, and then it was for me. It was just an enjoyable movie. It was nice to watch. I loved that the New Zealand director, when he was casted as the Rock guy. And I thought it was funny. Just the way you would see a character like that, and then not think that they would just speak like that. So that was kind of awesome to see that. And then you got to see like that next level of Thor inside of the movie as well. And but yeah, for my wife, Avengers, just the fact that they came together, that was pretty much about it. All right, number 8 for my wife was Infinity War, and number 8 for me was Shang-Chi. So for my wife, she said that she enjoyed the fact that she got to see all the heroes together. There was also some sad moments, of course, for her, where like Peter Parker and whatever. And I also asked her, to just kind of elaborate more on it, and she just basically said it was kind of nice to seeing all of them together, trying to fight and all of that. So for me, Shang-Chi, I think this is just only because it was most like a recent movie, something that just freshly came out. But the reason I really liked it was that it was the first movie that brought us back to the theater. We just got out of COVID, and I had no interest in seeing the Black Widow movie in the theater. And it's because I wish the Black Widow movie came out earlier. It would have been cool to see her origin earlier, right? But it was more of a prequel, right, to Black Widow, like an homage, a thank you to Black Widow, and it was okay. But honestly, I wish they did it earlier. So for me, I chose Shang-Chi because when it came out, it was the first movie that brought my family back to the theater. And then when we watched it, it was just really awesome. It was exciting to see just an awesome MCU movie with all the fighting. The train scene, or the bus scene, was just phenomenal. And yeah, I must have watched it 2 or 3 times right now, and absolutely just love that movie. Plus, I think my wife kind of likes also Shang-Chi because we used to watch Kim's Convenience all the time. So we already had a relationship with the actor as far as like liking the actor and stuff like that. All right. Number 7. So for my wife, she has Captain America. And then for me, I have Thor. So for my wife, the reason she liked Captain America was because it was like his storyline, which I totally get. I love the fact that he went from like this weakling kid to like being, well, even when he was a weakling, he wouldn't give up, when he probably should have, but he never gave up. And he just is kind of like an awe-inspiring movie where someone just really went and just never gave up. Just that whole attitude of just never giving up. And then when he became Captain America, even more so, he could portray that vibe of never giving up. And I know that's why my wife absolutely loved that one. So for me, like I said, was Thor. And it was a couple of things. One, it's an origin story. I think all of the ones that I put down, a lot of them are origin stories. I love origin stories. As long as I know him, I don't want to see him again and again and again. Like, I don't need to see another Batman origin story. I don't need to see another Spider-Man origin story. However, if they make another Batman movie in 5 years, I understand why they make an origin, because you have a new group of people watching the movie. Or if they do another Spider-Man movie in about 7 to 10 years, I understand why they do an origin, because you got new groups of people watching the movie. They might not know the origin. But however, this was a brand new origin for me. I'd never seen a Thor movie, and I thought it was done well. I was excited to see Thor, and then it was different because it wasn't necessarily on Earth, which it was, but you also got to see Asgard and all of those things, and that was really really awesome to see. And just trying to think what else I loved about Thor. Just like little moments. Of course, the second half, the battle scene with that big steel robot thingy, just didn't really get to me. But however, absolutely enjoyed the movie. So that was our number 7. So number 6 for my wife was Endgames, and number 6 for me was Civil War. So I asked my wife what she liked about Endgames, and she just basically said again that it was kind of cool that they came together, which I totally get. And I'll talk about it more, I guess, when I'll just talk about it now because I chose Endgame as well. But I think there was this one scene especially where Captain America was just beaten up. Like, he was just dusted. Everybody else was dusted. Not dusted as far as like dying, but like they just got their asses whooped, right? So here's Captain Marvel, and I remember this scene visually. So Captain America is looking at Thanos and basically all his enemies, right? And then all of a sudden, in his earpiece, it says on his left, and then you see Sam Wilson, a Falcon, right, comes out. But then you see Doctor Strange portal. Then you see Spider-Man's portal. Then you see the Black Panther's portal, right? And it's not just Black Panther, but it's everybody, right? And they're all screaming, Imbube, or whatever it is they're saying, they're screaming that, right? And then they do something with the soundtrack where it just kind of lifts up everything. And, it just gets intense. And then you notice that everybody from every movie starts coming together, right? And then Captain America finally says the one thing that we as comic people have been waiting for. And he says, Avengers, assemble. He never said Avengers assemble. And when he said that, I think I cried. Honestly, I think I cried. Because you knew that this battle was going to happen. And it just got real. And I'm sure that's why my wife loved that one. As far as my number 6 is Civil War. So it was the first time that we got to see kind of like the whole group together, but in a different situation where they're challenging. And it's kind of always been like that whole Michael Jordan versus LeBron thing. Like, we never got to see it, right? Or, who's better, if Mike Tyson could have fought Muhammad Ali. It's kind of like one of those, we wanted to see it, but we'll never get to see it. Well, we got to see it, right? We got to see this half versus this half. And, everything was pretty much for the first part kind of leveled off, but it was kind of cool to see, how everything was done. And that was really cool. Also to kind of introduce us to Spider-Man, right? It was that whole, I remember when the trailer first came out. Hold on real quick. Sorry about that. So I remember the trailer first came out, and it had nothing to do with Spider-Man at all, right? It was just a whole Civil War thing, blah, 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 fight, fight, fight. But then they showed, I think it was the last trailer before the movie comes, right? And then all you see is Iron Man yelling, Underoos. And then here comes a web shooting down and Captain America's shield. And then it's Spider-Man. Spider-Man takes it, and I think he says something like, hi, everyone. And that just blew like everybody's mind that Spider-Man was in the MCU, because we knew that was such a huge game changer, which doesn't make any sense, because if you figure about it, if you really think about it, Spider-Man is such a Earth level uh, character, right? I mean, he doesn't. He can only work within a certain amount of blocks. You know, like he can't fly or nothing. And yeah, he can shoot web and go from block to block. But like, you know, I'm not from New York, but how long would it take him to go from, you know, from, I don't know, 51st to the 25th Avenue? You know what I mean? Like, it'll take him forever. And so he can only work in so much. But the fact that Spider-Man was in the MCU really changed so many things. And yeah, it was really exciting. Just that one scene just really turned everything up. And yeah, anyway, so Civil War, that was a huge thing for me. So number 5 for my wife was Doctor Strange, and for me was Captain America. So I asked my wife, why did she like Doctor Strange? And she said that basically it was that it was a storyline. So for her, origin story, right? She just enjoyed the whole origin story of Doctor Strange. She thought it was funny, but she also thought it was kind of I guess kind of heartfelt, right? I mean, you talk about a guy who had everything, right? We saw him, right? He had the cars, he had the watches, and if you're not into watches, you wouldn't know exactly what he had. But at that time when Doctor Strange came out, I was actually working for a luxury watch company. So when he opened up that drawer, I knew what he had, and the prices of those watches. Like, if you go ahead and watch that scene again, it's actually incredible. We're talking about hundreds of thousands just for one watch. You know what I mean? Like, just crazy. And then his car, right? So his lifestyle, and the fact that he always wanted to be the best, and the fact that he had like the best hands, right? And so that was really something that my wife really loved, because what happened is he got into an accident, and he would do anything, to the fact that he pretty much made himself broke, is kind of what it felt like. Like, he wanted to find something to get him back to normalcy, get him back to where he was at the peak. No, that's all he wanted to do, was get back to his peak. And he couldn't figure it out. And then when he finally figured out where he could get that, whether it was a temple and all of that, they wouldn't let him in. But he refused to just stop, and he kept going. He kept going, and he kept learning, and he became Doctor Strange. So kind of like a Captain America, where you never give up. Like, you never ever ever give up. If there's something you want to achieve, you never give up. And so my wife really liked that part. So for me, it was Captain America, which, again, same thing like Doctor Strange. And we already talked about Captain America because of my wife's one. But I really embraced that whole Captain America thing. The fight with the Red Skull was okay. It was meh, whatever's. But the first part of it, I love the flagpole scene, where if I think it was the first person to get the flag, they could ride in the Jeep. So while everybody's trying to figure out one thing, he noticed the most obvious thing was, oh, let's take the pin off the bottom, let the flag drop, I'll pick up the flag. Which, by the way, is kind of taboo. You never ever let a flag touch the ground. But anyway, picked up the flag, gets up in the Jeep. So, just those little things, right? Or where he's getting beat up in the alley. And yeah, that kind of talked to me a little bit, as far as like me in my past, as far as encountering bullies and whatnot. But it was kind of cool to see his whole attitude, and then he went through this whole thing where, like, he was kind of more of like selling bonds versus actually being Captain America. And he's all like, I don't want to do this. I want to actually be something. I want to be worth something to America. So, he kept pursuing and all that stuff. Okay, anyway, number 4. So for my wife, she chose Guardian of the Galaxy number 1. And for me, number 4, I chose Iron Man number 1. So for my wife, all about the soundtrack. She absolutely loved the soundtrack, especially the opening scene, and probably everything in between, but especially that opening scene where you see Star-Lord on that planet, and then he uses like that chameleon as like a like a microphone, and he just it was a fun scene. Um, and I'll talk about Guardians when I get to Guardians, but I know that's why she loved that one. So number 4 for me was Iron Man, and for me, this is where it kind of started. I know Hulk was the original MCU movie, the first one, but for me, it was all about Iron Man and the graphics and the whole fact that I think Robert Downey Jr. really did such an incredible job that it really sucked me into the movie. Like, it wasn't Robert Downey Jr. anymore. It was literally Tony Stark. It was Tony Stark in the movies. Um, Portrayed by Robert Downey Jr., but at the same time, it was just Tony Stark. And everything was so believable. And when you saw the first Iron Man suit and how it didn't work, but you could tell, like, there's something going there. There's something that's going to work out. How he escaped. And yeah, just, it's so funny because, okay, I was going to say, I don't actually remember the villain from the first one. I just remember how impactful that movie was and how excited I was to see the first Iron Man movie. And it was a really good movie. And you have to remember, the bulk of these Avengers, especially Iron Man, they were at one time B-list, C-list characters. No one thought of them as A-list at all. That's why they assembled the Avengers. When the comics first came out, the Avengers comics, Marvel decided to take a bunch of heroes that wasn't really selling well, that wasn't doing well. It was all about Fantastic Four and about Spider-Man back in those days. So they weren't really doing well. So they put them together and they put them as one team and they call them the Avengers. And now they're practically all A-list characters, which is crazy. And it's to the point that I feel like X-Men characters are maybe still A-list, but they're behind the Avengers, which is so funny to think. And to think that it started with Iron Man, it's kind of incredible. But yeah, really enjoyed that movie. Robert Downey Jr. cemented the MCU. Like, he's the one that made the MCU what it is today. That's my honest opinion. It's not the whole Disney thing. It's Robert Downey Jr. And he paved this path as far as what the MCU should look and feel like. And he made it like we can act seriously, be serious actors, have serious emotions, and have serious conversations in a superhero movie. And yeah, it was a great movie for me. So number 3. So for my wife, number 3 was Shang-Chi. And number 3 for me was the Avengers. So I asked my wife to, again, elaborate, and she said that it was basically the bus scene. The bus scene is what took her to that next level for the movie. She absolutely loved that whole bus scene. And since that was such an early part of the movie, that excitement carried on through the whole movie, and she just absolutely loved it. And my son, he likes anime, so it was the closest thing to anime for him. So that's why he absolutely loves that movie. And I think if I was to ask my son, I know that he has Black Panther and Shang-Chi as probably 1 and 2. So really, he enjoyed that. And but basically getting back to my wife, it was the bus scene that really took her. And she loved Aquafina, as did I. I loved it. It's always funny how if you watch a Disney princess cartoon or a Disney cartoon, there's a main character and there's always like that sidekick, right? There's always that, right? So even like I don't know, Frozen, right? So you had Frozen, you had the main girl, and then you had like that little snowman, whatever his name was. God, I gotta think of his name, but you know what I'm talking about, that little snowman guy, right? So in a sense, Aquafina was Shang-Chi's like sidekick, and Disney does that all the time. They get the main character, the sidekick, right? Like think about Ant-Man. You had Ant-Man, and then you had that one comedian actor, right? That did the the whole like going backwards and telling a story, but in his own way, right? So that was like the sidekick. So Aquafina was fun because it was like that little sidekick. So that was her number three, and for my number three was Avengers. Um, that whole coming together, the whole storyline, and then that part that leads up to them coming together in New York, and then that whole scene where they're just like wrapping around, and then showing all the Avengers together. And he didn't say assemble, but like them coming together, and then that whole Bruce Banner part where he was all like, everybody's coming towards them, right? And at the same time, you have the whole Bruce Banner turn into the Hulk, and then he just like smashes that huge fucking spaceship, whatever thing. It just showed you the level of how crazy he was. But it was also cool to see these ground level characters such as Black Widow and Hawkeye. Like, they're the only two people that can really, they can't associate with people like Captain America or even Iron Man because they're such on the next level as far as power and ability and stuff. And so they're the only two people that can really associate with each other. And, it's cool to see that even the ground level, whether you only have a gun or a stunner or just a bunch of arrows, and that was always the question, right? Like, how many arrows does this guy have? Like, when is he going to run out of arrows? Right? There's only so much that he can do. But, they did the best with what they had. And it was just really cool seeing that whole scene, and just, it was really awe-inspiring. And then, of course, that one soundtrack that comes up and you can hear it. And you can probably hear it in your head right now, that whole Avengers theme thing. And it was just awesome. It was really awesome. And I was glad I was there in the theaters to watch it and just feel it. And, the crowd was there. And it was just so exciting. Number two for my wife, she loved Thor Ragnarok. And number two for me was actually, I'm going to actually link them together, was Endgames and Infinity War. So for my wife, she loves Kate Blanchett. So like I said, she loves actors and actresses. She loves Kate Blanchett. And so when she portrayed Hela, it was like she absolutely loved it. Just all because of how she portrayed Hela. Now there's some other moments, of course, she loved. She loved the whole next level Thor thing, and she loved really anything that had to do with Thor. She's a Chris Hemsworth fan. What can I say? She's a fan of him. So of course she loved the movie. But that was the big thing for her was Kate Blanchett. And she also said that it was pretty, it was a pretty funny movie, and she absolutely loved it as well. For me, like I said, Endgame and Infinity War, we're gonna consider that as one movie. And yeah, it's just like the whole coming together, right? Like, we've been together for the whole, geez, the Hulk and the Iron Man and Captain America and the Ultron and the Avengers, and then Ant-Man and Black Panther. It's just all of this, just slowly, everything started coming together, right? And then finally you have this build-up with Infinity Wars and Endgame. And very unexpected ending when everybody starts to die. And it's just like, holy crap, like what's going to happen? And it got you excited for Endgame. It just got you extremely excited for it. And then when Endgame happened, to see Tony Stark, dying, but what he did, not just for the Avengers, but like for the whole world, like what he did was just absolutely amazing. But again, for me, the biggest part was that whole coming together of the team when it was just Captain America. And that whole part where the portals open and then he says Avengers Assemble, like that just gets me every single time. Every single time he says Avengers Assemble, because I've been waiting for three Avengers movie, and then there was one movie, it could have been Civil War, where he almost said assemble, but he didn't. And it was just waiting for that one moment, and he finally says it. I just remember that vividly. And the other part was when Captain America grabbed Mjolnir, and that part was just like, man, like that part was so exciting. That part was just awesome. But those are our number two. And number one for my wife was Guardians of the Galaxy number two. And for me, my number one is Guardians of the Galaxy number one. So for my wife, again, just she loved Yondu because of The Walking Dead. So the actor that portrayed Yondu was in The Walking Dead. And that was Daryl's brother. And Daryl had to kill him. And she remembered that. And she remembered the bond and everything about it. And that really, really got to her. So when she saw Guardians of the Galaxy number two, um, you know, she really had the feels again for that movie. Plus, you know, she loved the soundtrack. Of course, my wife is all about the soundtrack, and she just loved. Yeah, I already said it. The other guy from the Gilmore Girls. I think he becomes like the new Yondu, whatever. So for me, Guardian of the Galaxy number one. So the reason I like this movie is because it's the one movie I can watch over and over and just have a great time. The soundtrack was awesome. Chris Pratt from Parks and Recreation. I love Parks and Recreation, so watching Chris Pratt was really awesome. It was funny. Drax was funny. Rocket Raccoon. The whole show was just awesome. But I thought it was going to lead into Nova. Like I thought Nova was going to come sooner because we did see the whole Nova thing. And the way that Nova, the writer Nova, comes together is because his planet gets, you know, basically destroyed. And that's how we get Nova. So I thought we was going to get Nova because the planet was basically destroyed. I don't know if that was in Guardian Galaxy number one. But long story short, that planet was destroyed. But that's how we get Nova. The comic character is, you know, from that because Thanos destroyed it. Maybe it was in number two. I don't know. But I thought we was going to get Nova. And just seeing that origin story of Guardian of the Galaxy, the whole jail scene, you know, the whole, this part here, that, really just so much great moments. And it was just such a fun movie. Like, it was one of the few movies when I left the theater, like I was smiling because I just enjoyed it so much. But yeah, so that was a top 10 for my wife and myself. I know it's not your typical one, and hope you enjoyed it. I have a comic haul coming up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like, share it, and leave a comment what your top 10 is. And I'm not going to tag anybody, but if you're watching this and you want to make the top 10, please, by all do it. All right. Other than that, shoots in my house.